Hi, I'm Saul Leacock, and I'm Anudda Bajan. I was born to a Colombian mother and a Barbadian father. And I must say I really enjoyed my childhood, especially in the early years when we were growing up. We lived in Riesland, Clapham. Of course, we were moving around a few places, but then we settled on Riesland, Clapham for a while. It is from there that we were very much into meeting with the people in the neighborhood, gathering friends, me and my 3 brothers and my 2 sisters. And we enjoyed ourselves going out with the boys, picking dunks, gooseberries, hog plums, ackies, even breaking cane. We sat down together. Those early days were very much fun. We sat together and we ate them together, and we cracked jokes in those early days, and pitched marbles. Those were very, very good days, I must say. We pitched marbles and we enjoyed ourselves, as it were. We weren't the richest at the time, but our parents knew what to do to improvise and provide. I've had some times when they were rough and some good times. My mother was the only person who was taking care of us, and she wasn't working. My father was overseas at the time, and occasionally he would send down some funds to help, but she made sure that we got our daily supplies. And I remember distinctly having to go with her every month shopping. She would buy 25 pounds of rice, 25 pounds of flour, 25 pounds of sugar, and 2 biscuit tins, soda bits and eclipse. Large tins, those who remember those large tins back then. Back then, you could get much fish for $1, like 10 fish for $1, and things were far cheaper than they are today. And I recall, I don't know how many young people remember, but there was the 1 cent, and then there was the penny, 2 on it, and then there was the 50-cent piece, as it were. And then they had the single dollar, paper dollar at that time. Those were the days, long ago, as the old people would say, them did the days, in them days, when them days was them days. So I enjoyed my childhood. We used to play games, and even though we used to eat sugar cakes and those kind of things, we used to exercise much, play much games, and we used to climb an ackee tree and play catcher in an ackee tree. Moving, we had one young fella named Ratty who used to swing from branch to branch like a monkey, so it was difficult catching him. Occasionally somebody would slip, but they wouldn't fall all the way down to the ground. But those were very good days indeed. There are times when we were very, very deprived, poor, but there was a breadfruit tree in the yard, thank God. And we had breadfruit often, you know. My mother was excellent at making bakes. These bakes were not normal bakes. These bakes were made with whole wheat flour, because she knew somehow what to put in them. She grated potato in them, Irish potato. She would grate some cheese in them and season it well. And we got a wholesome bake for sometimes dinner as well as supper. I mean breakfast as well as supper. But she used to ensure that we come and get our food. What I particularly remembered about my mother, she was like a kind of a doctor. She knew the natural remedies and what to apply. Comfrey leaves on the head, kerosene oil around the stomach if you had belly aches and that kind of thing. But she was excellent, but she was a mother of prayer. I would never forget that, often seeing her on her knees praying in Spanish to Dios. And there are times when we didn't have anything. I remember distinctly there was a time we had nothing to put on the table in terms of meat. what in Spanish was called carne. We had rice and potato and flour, but no meat. And I saw Mama kneel down and pray to Papa Dios to send meat, carne. And before the evening was come, a large duck flew into our yard, and that was the end of that duck. We had duck for Christmas. No ducking out for that duck. Those were the good old days. Of course, we had some fellows who were involved in crime, like that young man who, with another chap, killed the prime minister at the time's grandmother. That was a very telling story for many people in the neighborhood. I think he was hanged for that. But he was the bigger of all the lot, and he would often cheat on us and steal our marbles. But crime always never pays, and it always catches up with you sometime. But all the boys were together. They had fights occasionally, but there was no such thing as diabetes or high blood pressure or anything like it as the young children today are experiencing. But those were the good old days. I'll never forget them. The activity. When Christmas time came around, there was always a gift under the Christmas tree, whatever form it may be. You know, as young children growing up, we didn't even have toys. We made our own cars out of wood, you know, and played with stoppers as men and women, driving them about. We would make box cars and roller skates and so on with the tin from the evaporated tin. We would make the wheels and the boxcar, and we would come down the hill behind where we lived, the Flagstaff Hill, all the way down. And those were good old days. I never forget them. Yeah, I remember early in my years, when I was about 6 or 7, we lived in front of the Globe, directly in front of the Globe cinema. My father owned the shop. And I remember as a little boy, whoever stayed up last with him would get one of those large glasses of ice cream when that van came around with a sign at the back saying, "Mind that child." And I used to stay up many a night last without dropping to sleep. But nonetheless, right in front was the Globe. And of course, when a show, an action-packed show was being telecasted, intermittent time, the doors were open and we would go and stand up at the door and watch the remainder, which was usually action part. But those were some of the days growing up as a young individual, going crabbing, going fishing. Nowadays, young people don't have anything to do. They're bored. During COVID time, they could have gone crabbing, they could have gone fishing. At least they would learn a little patience. And they should have gone to the beach, I believe. And I don't know, some people didn't know how to swim, but we knew how to swim. Every Sunday, my mother would ensure that we go to the beach. You had a choice between eating all your food and going to the beach, or eating some, going to the beach, come back and eat the rest. And many times you opt for the second option. But those were some good old days. My mother ensured that she provided for us. And she didn't speak English, she spoke Spanglish, a mixture of Spanish and English. And we understood her. So when consequences were to come, we understood in Spanish what that meant. And we knew what the consequences would be. She fathered us, as it were. So even though my father was not present because he was overseas, almost most of his years, came back once in a while, and twice I can remember, to visit us. But my mother did the job single-handedly. And of course she had my eldest brother, Rudy, who was the disciplinarian as a backup. I have 2 other older sisters as well. One of them was working, and that helped out the family tremendously. I went to Robert Primary, that no longer existent today, right next to Hill Supermarket. behind Hillsborough Market, next to the Moravian Church in Robert Street. And I would never forget some of those experiences. Teachers like Mr. Hill and Mr. Downs, the principal, Mr. Harris, who played table tennis, and Miss Weeks, she was my infant teacher. And those were the days we had to learn tables. And then also we had a lot of spelling words. We used to get every day 20 spelling words a day. And then every morning, first thing was spelling. And those who got 20 out of 20 would get a little something sometimes, a little gift. As robot boys, we were sometimes, we talk about gangs back then, we had a war against the Wesley Hall boys, and that was over the biscuit factory. Because the biscuit factory used to give us little pieces of biscuits. Rather than discarding them, we would go with bags and collect. But the Wesley Hall boys would come there before us and we couldn't get. So war broke out between the Wesley Hall boys and the Robert Primary School boys. And we would go through the gully, which the water came from the two laundry mats that were in the area, warm water, but we would go across the gully, and sometimes we would naughtily throw stones at each other. And then, of course, the principal would deal with those afterwards. But we didn't mind. Those were the good old days. And that is, as it were, how wicked we were at that time. But nowadays, young people don't use stones. They use knives and guns and everything like it, rather than even some more innocent pleasure that we enjoyed with the games that we used to play. But those were some of the naughty days, I admit. So growing up was a very interesting and enjoyable. We had people that we looked up to as teachers and highly respected, primary school teachers, as well as secondary. I went to St. Leonard's Boys after I did the screening test, as it were. I did it at Harrison College. I didn't pass for Harrison. I passed for St. Leonard's Boys. And that is where I went. And even though I could speak Spanish, I did Spanish. And for the first time, French was introduced at St. Leonard's Boys. I was one of two individuals that passed both French and Spanish at St. Leonard's Boys. And Mr. Leacock is to be thanked for that. Thank, bless his soul, he's now resting. Mr. Andrew Leacock was a great Spanish teacher, very connected, and we understood each other, and he was there to sympathize, Spanish and French. Encouraged me in that area, as it were. St. Leonard's Boys School was a good time as well. The boys would come across to the girls past church side only when the bell rings, you know. Getting them chased across was the next challenge of ours as prefects at that time. But we had some good times, very, very good times at St. Leonard as well. Then I went on to community college, and then I stopped in between to go to Erdeston Teachers Training College and became qualified as a teacher, where I worked for 30 years as a teacher, teaching at St. Lawrence School. I taught guidance and family life, and then I taught 11 plus class. I taught infants as well, and then when I went to West Terrace, I taught first juniors, and then I taught 11 plus for years, from third to fourth. Did a few lessons a couple of times. All of that was very enjoyable. My teaching lessons were very practical. So if I had a teaching lesson on fraction, I would make sure we bring an orange or biscuits or something, and we could teach fractions and demonstrate. We also had two good clubs going, the health club and also the environmental club. The environmental club was to keep the environment tidy and to get children putting plastics in one can and paper in the net. And I even appointed some health policemen. And I gave them a little red cap and a little notebook with a pencil to report anyone who was found littering. Sadly, we had to abandon that because it scared the infant children. when they heard the health policeman was coming. And then, of course, we sold a number of things at the school and raised funds, some for the school as well as some for the clubs as well. But teaching health and teaching family life and teaching the 11 plus exam, again, were fun. I had to sadly cry when I received the call, even though that is what I wanted, to act as guidance counselor at the Darrell Jordan Secondary School, which then was called St. Lucie Secondary. I enjoyed that stint there as well. For 11 years, worked as a guidance counselor. So starting at Providence Boys, then Earlston Model. We had students at the school, like Barbara Cook-Aline, the registrar. She was one of the students then when I was there. Those were good old days, I must say. I enjoyed them. And then move into guidance counseling was another aspect of my life that was destined to bring about much changes. But the stress and so on, I enjoyed it. And teaching as a way of maturing people and developing them. How to be more confident, how to deliver your lesson, how to plan ahead, how to make goals and seek to achieve them. All of that was done during my years developing as a teacher. Afterwards, started to get invitations to speak at places like PTA and schools and even churches. And that is the area that I enjoyed most when I became a guidance counselor. My particular skills were worked against me because I was being called out pretty frequently to give lectures and to attend seminars and workshops and to speak at certain places like graduation, award ceremonies, and so on. And I'm sure that the principal and deputy weren't too happy all the time with those invitations. But I enjoy them, and the places I went, people enjoy them as well. Up to now, we still get invitations to speak at graduation ceremonies and other schools and PTAs and so on. The aim is to make an impact. And that is why when I started my practice, I called it Impact Family Counseling Services. The aim was to make an impact upon anyone that I came across who was referred to me for counseling in some capacity. Because being trained in social work, that's why my degree was in social work, and in counseling, and also in my master's being in psychological, education psychology, and that is where I do all types of counseling. Even in my social work practice, I was trained attached to the psychiatric hospital, but not as a patient, as an intern, where I did facilitated 2 psychotherapy groups, manic depression and bipolar, enjoyably so. The response was very, very excellent from Dr. Ann Hill and some of the other psychiatrists who had Dr. Lustre, who had recommended it. She told me, want you to go and study the psychopathology of mental illness and then facilitate 2 psychotherapy groups with the manic depressive, which is bipolar, and the schizophrenic. I learned much then. I must say I learned much then. It helped me in my growing years as a social worker, still attached to the school as a guidance counselor. But you get all types of cases as a guidance counselor. You name the case, we get it. And we have managed to help and save many children. And remember, you can't save all. It's up to them to go to the water. When you take them to the water, it's up to them to drink. They have to take in. But a lot of students I'm meeting now recently who have told me, and I can call by name, a number of, but they were telling people that because of them that their life was spared from going into criminal activity and going into the prison. I remember one chap came by my school one time, not Darrell Jordan, but St. Lawrence, and sat next to my desk and started to cry. And when I asked him what happened, he proceeded to tell me that he almost stabbed somebody in the back with a fork. He was so angry, took up the fork, was about to throw it in the person's back, when he remembered something I told him during guidance class. And always consider the consequences of your actions before you act. And he threw down the fork and he'd walk up the job, and he came straight by my office and broke down crying. Of course, others weren't that fortunate. There were two young men who committed murder in the swamp, not too far from that period of time, because men used to work in the swamp, and they committed murder by driving the fork right down somebody's back into the ground after the person fell, running away from them. And back then, those little boys had guns. Shot 2 shots up in the air, mission accomplished, but it wasn't the end. They were caught, and up to now, they're still serving time in prison. But those were the days that we had to experience both good and bad influences. We had to learn from the bad and choose the good. And I've learned over the years that that is the difference between intelligence and wisdom. Intelligent people learn from their own mistakes, but wise people learn from the mistakes of others and not to repeat it. One of the most interesting parts of my life was meeting my wife, Angela Patricia Leacock, formerly Holder, and getting married to her. In those days, I was young, and as we say, I had hair. So here today, gone tomorrow. But she accepted me as I was, and I wasn't too particular into girls. As a matter of fact, when I was a younger boy attending lessons, I used to run from girls. But those were the early days. I met her, Angela Leacock. It's interesting, I met her from the Black Rock Church before, from the Adventist Church. And we would talk and so on. But it's only after my sister died in 1984, and I was in North America, I decided I was going to go back because I had a teaching job. I decided, what am I going to do back home? There's nobody to go back to, there's no married. Just my sister Amy alone, and I didn't want to leave her alone. All the rest of the family were overseas. They migrated to North America. And while I was in the airplane coming back home, she came to my mind. Thousands of feet up in the air, Angela came to my mind. So I made up my mind that when I landed, I would give her a call and probably take her out on a date. I met her. She used to work at the Hilton at the time. She was the manager of a store. And we started talking. And at one point, I made an appointment to meet her where the fountain was next to the Treasury building. And I met her, it was supposed to meet her by a certain time, and all I saw was the fountain. She never showed up. She explained, of course, why she was delayed at work and so on. But that started a very good relationship that led to our marriage. We invited the whole church at that time, and people were allowed to bring dishes, and some people came in crashing on us. But it was a good occasion nonetheless. People donated. Some people looked forward to it more than us, as it were. But we enjoyed that union together, out of which came 2 boys, Samuel and then Seth. My wife, Angela Leacock, was my first and my only. Young people don't believe me when I tell them so. They tell me I'm telling lies. I would have had to taste something. So I tell them, no, I was a virgin when I married. My wife was my first and my only. Of course, you've met good-looking girls, those who were attractive, better looking than, more executive, but I married her. And she was the one I've lived with and stayed with for 35, going 36 years. Over the years, I've lost some well-loved family members. My eldest sister, Ruth. My youngest sister died first. She was attacked and stabbed to death in New York. And that was a big issue. We had a big funeral. I went over there and I spoke at the funeral at one point. I was still young. I was in teaching. And that was Carol. Carol died first, and then Ruth, my eldest sister, she died. So presently, Amy's still alive. She's in Christchurch. Nola is still alive. She's in Florida, as well as Rudy. Presently, my eldest brother Jerome, he's in New York as well. Still a Seventh-day Adventist and working with the conference. And so most of us are still alive, thank God, except for the eldest and the youngest that would have died. But my mother went first. She died first. But she had done her work, I must say. Thank God for her. So I still remember and treasure things that she would have taught us and the example that she would have set. So I try to live life as an example. We don't get into any conflict with our neighbors. None of me and my neighbors are in any quarreling mode at all or fighting. We live good. I share with them whatever we get, and they would share, whatever they have. We still greet one another. We talk to one another. My next door neighbor is into gardening as well. Gardening is also learned one of these hobbies from an old man who's just recently died named Mr. Blackman. Mr. Blackman encouraged me in gardening. He used to do gardening. I had his garden loaded with produce. And I picked up that, and every spot of my land around, even though it's not much here in West Terre, I still have beets out there, I still have cabbage, I still have some potato slips, and some tomatoes, lettuce, kale. I tried to grow some broccoli, but they're forever bearing and never producing the broccoli head itself. And also some eggplant. You have some sweet peppers and a plantain tree and some banana trees, all on a little spot. As it were, just planted some peach trees there and some pumpkin vines, 4 pumpkin vines. So you can see that I'm into that. Which I enjoy as well. So I do the preparation work, and my son would do the maintenance, wetting, and my wife would do the reaping. So she would collect from outside and put in the pot, as it were. So cooking is something we enjoy doing. And over the years, we have enjoyed our vegetarian life. Sometimes we've eaten more than we should and put on and then had to take it back off. We've had our little health struggles, as it were, trying to get the blood pressure, the cholesterol under control, as it were. I also had an important surgery in which there were minor traces of cancer in the prostate, but happily, thank God, we were able to diagnose it early, and the doctor said there were microscopic traces. My urologist, Dr. Emtage, and he said it is small. It's like trying to kill an ant with a bulldozer. I said, but I want the ant killed. So the prostate was removed, with much success. And I was thankful to him as well. I'm one of their success stories, as it were. So I use that to tell other men to go and get the early check of prostate cancer. Early detection, early prevention, early, without regrets. You'll be thankful. So from then till now, and I did that before I retired, because I didn't want to spend retirement money on medicals and in my dying years. I made sure I got it out early, got it out of the way, and I had to pray and ask the Lord what to do, guidance. And the good book directed me. The Lord directed me to, if the eye offend you, pluck it out. If your hand offend you, cut it off. So I said the best solution is removal, surgery. And I remember my mother going for surgery. I said, I want surgery. And so I encourage young men to go. Some have been encouraged at my church to go for surgery as a result, with success. Thank God. So the example that you live, the lifestyle you live, a healthy lifestyle. So my routine on mornings and family, we wake up, we make sure we have our devotion, and then I drink 2 glasses of water, preferably warm with some lemon, send you to the bathroom, clear your bowel, then I go on an exercise program. I like the daily walks. The neighbors would tell you I'm always up and down, walking around, and sometimes, maybe delayed a little. I have different routes I take. But exercise is right now into my life. Exercise, keep the blood pressure down, blood sugar down, cholesterol down. Exercise is key. And get out and exercise. And that will, and go during the day, help people, do counseling. When you're helping or blessing people, you will be blessed as a result. The way to be happy, we say, is to make others happy. I'm Saul Leacock, and I'm a counselor, social worker, a minister, and a husband, and a father. I'm just another Bajan.